Hello, everyone. It's Charlton. Please subscribe to my channel. Tap the notification bell. I'd appreciate it majorly. So I wanted to review some stuff about the disappearance and murder of Vanessa Guillen and just go through a number of things without going into too much detail and just wasting too much time. But it's things that just hopefully clear up some items and talk about a couple things that I've been thinking about and looking into. And I'll try to get right to the point about one of them. That is, throughout this missing persons case of Vanessa Guillen, the Army has repeatedly said that there is no connection between the disappearance of Vanessa Guillen and the disappearance of another Fort Hood soldier that took place basically almost a year ago in August of 2019, Gregory Morales, who I believe was last seen on August 20th, and whose remains were actually located during the investigation or search for Vanessa Guillen over the two plus months that she was missing. And I actually think I do think there is a connection, and I don't know for sure, obviously, and I've gotten things wrong, but there's a very specific reason that I think there's a connection, mostly, but not exclusively, mostly because of the way it seems the bodies were disposed of, and in fact, the fact that Gregory Morales' remains were found, just about a week before Vanessa Guillen's were, I always found that to be a little bit odd. And I'm still not, to this moment, I don't know exactly how they came to find Gregory Morales' remains. Whether it was because of an anonymous tip. There were some reports that basically sort of stated it that way as a tip. I think an ABC outlet, ABC 13, something like that, called it a tip, and then others characterized it as an anonymous tip. I think Tim Miller mentioned it, or maybe Nancy Grace mentioned it while she was discussing things with Tim Miller in one of her podcasts where they talked about this in a fair amount of detail. Not Gregory Morales, but Vanessa Guillen's, the search for her and how he came to find, the Pelican case, and then later the remains and how the remains were disposed of and so forth. And that's in the affidavit, which is what we're looking at behind me there, the affidavit for the other woman that's characterized as his girlfriend. I think it's Cecily Aguilar. So, but I just don't know yet. In that podcast, Tim Miller, I think, mentions the remains of Gregory Morales being found. And I don't know if they were just found by Texas Equisearch while they were searching for Vanessa Guillen, or if they in fact were found because somebody called in an anonymous tip. That remains unknown to me. But if you'll recall that the day before the partial remains of Vanessa Guillen, even though they haven't been positively identified or confirmed by the Army yet because of the medical examiner and because the way the body was disposed of, being, using lime, being burnt twice, and being dismembered and basically encased in concrete, at least partially. The day before the partial remains of Vanessa Guillen were found near the Leon River, near the fire pit where Tim Miller originally found the Pelican case, which totally tipped him off that they were very close to finding her and unfortunately finding her body. There was a report of a different set of remains, which they weren't even sure if they were animal or human, that actually had to be sent up to the Dallas Institute of Forensic something. It's in the story. And that set of other remains were actually found 2 blocks from where the remains of Gregory Morales were found. Okay, and this is the day before everything broke wide open. when they found the partial human remains near the Leon River, which turned out to be Vanessa Guillen. And I remember saying that, I didn't think these remains, this story before the Leon River remains were found, I didn't think they were Vanessa Guillen because they were so close to Gregory Morales, and I just didn't see the connection between Gregory Morales and Vanessa Guillen if there was this possible motive that was out there, that she had been sexually harassed by her superior, and that was the reason for her disappearance, because how could that possibly, how could have possibly that same thing happen to Gregory Morales, because he's a guy, and it just didn't fit. But after thinking on everything, after reading the affidavit for the other girlfriend who's now in custody and is going to be charged with, I forget exactly, the charge, something to do with tampering with evidence. I mean, they, in the affidavit, it spells out in very graphic detail how they tried to conceal this body by dismembering it, first burning it, then dismembering it with like a hatchet or axe and some kind of machete-like knife, and burying it in 3 different graves, taking the head off, the limbs, and then, the torso being, I guess, left alone, and then, those being put in 3 different graves, then coming back at a later date and digging it all back up again and trying to burn it again, and then adding lime and concrete and so forth. Absolutely horrendous, obviously. So, but the fact that they had 3 different graves, it made me think back to this story of, the day before Vanessa Guillen's remains were found. And this, just quickly to cruise through it, Killeen police are investigating after unidentified remains were found Saturday afternoon in a field. The remains were discovered in the 3400 block of Florence Road around 1:33 p.m. According to police, witnesses told officers they had located some kind of unidentified remains. The area is walking distance from a location in the 3200 block. The 3200 block of Florence Road, where skeletal remains of Gregory Wedel Morales were found on June 19th. It is unclear if Saturday's discovery is connected. The remains will be sent to the Southwestern Institute of Forensic Sciences in Dallas. That's what I was searching for before when I was referencing that, to determine if they're human or animal. And basically what I'm suggesting is that it's possible, and even Gregory Wedel Morales, because it had been an entire year, almost, until his remains were found. He had to be identified by dental records, I believe. I have his article up here. I've read that. And, and who knows what other things were done to his remains to conceal his, death or murder, and they do suspect foul play in his case. But the fact that there's potentially that's 2 blocks from where he was found. If they turn out to be his remains and you had multiple grave sites for Gregory Wedel Morales, similar to multiple grave sites for Vanessa Guillen, that would suggest to me that they're the same MO and done by the same person. Part of the other thing that had me thinking what I'm describing to you is the manner in which the length they went to hide the body. Aaron David Robinson, who has now committed suicide, and Cecily Aguilar. It sounded like they, had some experience, or he had some experience, and even like having come back the second time they came back, they had purchased gloves, they had hairnets, and that's when they had the concrete and the lime, had to dig the bodies, all the portions, the 3 graves back up, tried to burn them again, and then, I guess covered the grave sites with lime, put the remains back in there and poured in fresh concrete, and then I think rocks over top of that. It's horrendous, believe me, obviously. So that was one of the major things that I was thinking all this time. So and to just quickly So on the evening of, this is the affidavit for Cecily Aguilar. On the evening of 4/22/2020, or the early morning of 4/23/2020, Specialist Robinson picked up Aguilar at a gas station she worked at and took her out to a site near the Leon River and near a bridge. A box with wheels and handles was already at the site. Specialist Robinson walked Aguilar over to the woods and opened up a box for Aguilar, and she saw a dead female inside the box. Aguilar, on a later date, identified the dead female as Vanessa Guillen. To more easily dispose of and to conceal the body of the dead female, Specialist Robinson and Aguilar proceeded to dismember the dead female's body. They used a hatchet or axe and a machete-type knife. They removed the limbs and the head from the body. Specialist Robinson and Aguilar attempted to burn the body. However, the body would not burn completely. They placed the dead female in 3 separate holes and covered up the remains. Those, like the other 2 holes hadn't been found as of, that's why it was partial human remains, the Tuesday of this last week. It was either Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. And Specialist Robinson and Aguilar returned to the site on a later date. This date was believed to be 4/26/2020, according to cellular phone. Telephone site analysis. Prior to their return, they obtained hairnets and gloves. Aguilar purchased a bag of what she referred to as concrete from someone utilizing Facebook Messenger. So she purchased the concrete. It goes on. I mean, I don't have time to go over everything that's in here, But that to me just suggested like somebody who had experience had done this before, whether or not, I don't know. My feeling is that if those other set of remains that were found on Saturday in this article, that we don't even know if they're human or animal, but are 2 blocks from where Gregory Morales' remains were found, if those are Gregory Morales, I would definitely think that that's not a coincidence that you have multiple grave sites in Gregory Morales' case and multiple grave sites in Vanessa Guillen's case. The other thing that I was thinking that, and I saw most recently the attorney for the family, Natalie Kwan, and it was, I think, just as of yesterday. I don't know if I have that up here. I'll just paraphrase. I mean, basically, it seemed as though she was suggesting that, and I don't know if the Army had suggested this to her or what, that Vanessa Guillen was going to report the next day on Specialist Aaron David Robinson that he was having an affair with a married woman, and a woman married to another former Fort Hood soldier. Which that's been reported that she's the estranged wife of a different former Fort Hood soldier, not obviously not Aaron Robinson, and that supposedly Vanessa was going to report that the next day, and that's what set him off in a rage, and he bludgeoned her to death with a hammer, hitting her over the head, I think repeatedly with a hammer, and then ultimately putting her in the Pelican case, which is like a huge, I don't have a picture up on the huge, like large, very robust, like plastic, industrial type plastic, strong plastic case that I think is waterproof and whatever. It's like the 3 feet wide that you could put an entire person in, And then he left her there until around 8:30 that night, coming back and then hauling the case out to his car. And a witness observed him doing that. Observed him struggling with a Pelican case that appeared to be extremely heavy. That's what led them to him. And a Texas Equisearch founder, Tim Miller, describes that. And I believe the authorities, and I'm fairly certain even the Army Criminal Investigation Division were a part of that, part of that particular investigation. I don't know if that witness came to Tim Miller first and then it went to the authorities. And I think at that point, Aaron David Robinson agreed to let them inspect his cell phone, and that's what led them to the site where the Pelican Pelican case was burned, and ultimately the grave. So, but that motive or that that reason for why he killed her, I just have a hard time. I have a hard time believing that. I do, and I don't know what his motive is. I have a theory, I do, but I'm not even gonna. It's because it's way too. It's just an idea, and I don't have anything to back it up, and I'm not even going to express my theory at this point. But I don't think that was the reason. I don't think, and before, so far the Army has said there's no evidence that she was being sexually harassed. That's what the Army says. We don't know for sure, I guess, and that Aaron David Robinson had nothing to do with, he wasn't sexually harassing her. He wasn't her superior. She wasn't in his chain of command whatsoever. I think he was only slightly outranked her because he was specialist and she was private first class. I think she's become specialist in the time that she's been missing because of the time that you are with the Army at a certain date, you become specialist. But I don't think that just didn't make sense to me. The idea that she was going to report him for having an affair with another soldier's wife caused him, which is I don't even know if you would be court-martialed for that. I don't think you would. But I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know the Army that good. I don't think that was the reason for him killing her. I actually think, I know this is going on and on, I actually had this idea when I was just thinking through. I actually think this was not spur of the moment. I think he was prepared to kill her that day. And not just because he had the hammer. I mean, a hammer could be part of any work site, particularly when you're working on arms. I don't know if that's what his job was. It's very possible. I think it is. But, having the Pelican case ready there, I think he had every intention of killing her that day. That's my sense. That's my gut feeling. And so I just think there's some other larger motive, especially if say I'm right, that it was totally premeditated, that he was ready to do it that day, that he was aware, he was aware he could get away with it. And that, I mean, like the fact that he was able to get away with it for as long as he did, and even, successfully get her off the base, kill her and get her off the base without being detected, almost, suggests that you would almost have to be prepared for that. I don't see how you could get that lucky in that secure of an environment, where there are, I mean, even though there's got to be cameras somewhere, but he would know where the cameras were. And you would almost have to have been ready. You would have had to have thought that through to successfully, bring this to 2.5 months. He almost, I wouldn't say got away with it, but, we still don't know who killed Gregory Morales, So, that was my sense. And I still have trying to think it through. I mean, here's the affidavit, describing some of the events of that day, and it says, a witness stated that Private First Class Guillen left the arms room where she was working to visit the arms room at another location at Fort Hood, one controlled by Specialist Aaron Robinson, in order to confirm serial numbers for weapons and equipment. The witness verified that Private First Class Guillen left the arms room without her U.S. Army identification card, bank card, and car keys with her barracks key attached. The witness stated that her property was still in the arms room when he secured the arms rooms for the day. So the later in that day, whatever time that is, when he basically secured the arms room and it was basically the end of the working day, her stuff was still in there. And I guess he's the one who signed off that she was, present. I'm not certain of that, though. A search of Private First Class Guillen's phone records revealed that the last outgoing text from her phone was a message to Specialist Robinson's phone. Specialist Robinson was one of the last people known to have seen Private First Class Guillen. On 4/22, Specialist Robinson stated he texted Private first Guillen to inform her he was in the arms room. He said she read the serial numbers for equipment, and afterward he gave her paperwork and the serial numbers for the serial number for a 50 caliber machine gun which needed to be serviced. He said she left the arms room and he believed she would have next gone to the motor pool. Witnesses at the motor pool prepared to receive the paperwork for private first class Guillen stated she did not arrive with the papers. So, it's a thought. I mean, I've read through that multiple times. Whether or not there's other people involved is difficult. And whether or not it was spur of the moment or he intended to kill her that day, I agree that I'm not totally firm on that. But my sense is that he was ready and that he, he intended to kill her that day beforehand. And he didn't just fly into a fit of rage because of whatever reason. So, in terms of the missing persons, Gregory Wedel Morales, and that's, his name is Gregory Wedel, and I didn't until I started reading about him a little bit more. I realized that he, that was his married name, Gregory Wedel Morales. I don't know why he took his wife's last name. That I'm not sure. I mean, some people, who knows? I really don't know. I don't know why he did that, but he did, And I saw in one of the articles when I was looking into his case, that when he went missing, he was actually in the process of, I guess, divorcing her. And there's a post on one of his posts of his Facebook page, basically, where he says, and this is a few months before he went missing, that he never has luck with. He's going to remain single his whole life, and he never has luck with women or something like that. But he was in the process of divorcing his wife, and she's been in the press, discussing his case, or at least talked to some reporters and some reports. Her name's Penny Morales, but he missed his divorce as a result of him disappearing. That's one of the things. Because he was done his service, he was going to be, discharged from the Army because he had done all of his required service in like 2 weeks. People said that that's crazy. He wouldn't have gone AWOL then. But he also missed his, I guess, the finalizing of his divorce, whatever divorce proceedings that remained, he missed those as a result of him going missing, and he, I guess, to this day is legally, or was legally, married to his wife. It's not his former wife, Penny Morales. So, the only other thing I'll quickly mention, and I'll finish this. This probably went on way too long. Is there was the story that from the family that she was called into work that day unexpectedly. She wasn't supposed to work that day, And whether or not there's other people, involved besides these two individuals, and there's some kind of cover up going on. I'm not convinced either way yet, one way or the other. And it says in Guillen's case, this is basically her older sister who's been, was the person who was most in the public eye initially, calling for more from the Fort Hood authorities in her search and so forth, and doing a lot of the protesting in front and so forth. But in Guillen's case, her older sister Myra was the first to notice something was wrong. Her sister was scheduled to go hiking with friends on April 22nd, but was unexpectedly called into work on her day off at the armory, family said, where she works with small arms and artillery. The CID said most soldiers have been in their barracks during the pandemic and are routinely called in if something had to be accomplished. The sisters are close and communicate often when Vanessa Guillen stopped replying between 11:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. Her sister was alarmed. Others tried to text the soldier, but messages were not delivered, and calls went straight to voicemail. Myra Guillen said she reported her sister missing to command and drove 3 hours to Houston, from Houston to Killeen, to start searching, but she could not get on the base until the next morning. So the sister went there that very day that she went missing, that evening. I mean, that's how I understand it from reading that. But what I was pointing out is that she was called into work on her day off at the Armory, family said, where she works with small arms in artillery. The CID said some soldiers have been in there. Some said most soldiers have been in their barracks during the pandemic and are routinely called in if something had to be accomplished. I don't know, because there was the story that she had been called in by the supervisor who possibly was sexually harassing her, and that maybe that was the same person that supposedly walked in on her while she was showering. And the Army has investigated those claims and has said that they didn't find any of that. But I don't know who called her in. I'm suspecting that it was just another co-worker like Robinson, even though they didn't work in the same building, and that she was called in that day, for those guns with the serial numbers on it that she ultimately, went to see him for. And again, that gets back to my initial gut feeling that he intended to kill her that day and that he was ready to do it. And that's how he was able to successfully get away with it for as long as he did, and even would get away with it just in that day. You would have to be so lucky to do that without being prepared. It's almost impossible, in my opinion. But it says a witness stated that Guillen left the arms room when she was working to visit the arms room. A witness stated that Private First Class Guillen left the arms room where she was working to visit the arms room at another location at Fort Hood, one controlled by specialist Aaron Robinson, in order to confirm serial numbers for weapons and equipment. The witness verified that PFC Guillen left the arms room without her U.S. Army identification card, etc. It says that Special and Robinson was one of the last people known to have seen Private First Class Guillen on 4/22. Robinson stated he texted Guillen to inform her he was in the arms room. So I do think that he was the one who called her into work that day for this one task. But I don't believe he killed her because she was going to report him for having an affair with another soldier, another former soldier from Fort Hood. I think he was prepared to kill her that day for some other reason, and I don't know what that reason is. I have a theory. I do, but I'm not going to state it right now. But I do think that this is connected to Gregory Wedel Morales. If those other remains that were found over the weekend, it's on Saturday, 2 blocks from where he was found, if those turn out to be his, I definitely think these 2 murders were done by the same person, by Robinson, and who else, I don't know. And that's the story there. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like down below, and I will see you in the next video. Later, man.